945 words, right at the upper edge of the target range. Here's the final script. There is a federal account called the Judgment Fund. It appears in a single sentence of the U.S. Code, buried in Section 1304 of Title 31, and it has quietly paid out billions of dollars every single year since 1956 without one line item ever crossing a congressional vote. No elected official signs off on what leaves this account. No elected official can stop a payment once it starts. And by the time you finish this video, you'll understand why that was never an accident. Here's what it actually is in plain terms. When the federal government loses a lawsuit or settles one someone has to pay, normally that would mean an agency's budget takes the hit, which means Congress notices, which means oversight. The Judgment Fund exists so that doesn't happen. It's what's called a permanent, indefinite appropriation. Treasury just pays, automatically. No agency budget touched. No fiscal year limit. No renewal required. The money is simply always there, waiting to move the moment a judgment or settlement is finalized. Congress created it in 1956, and here's the detail that should stop you cold. They only had to vote once. That's the mechanism. A permanent appropriation doesn't need refunding, reauthorizing, or revisiting. Once it's law, it operates forever on autopilot, immune to every future Congress, every new administration, every election that might have changed how this money gets spent. The lawmakers who voted for it in 1956 are dead. The rule they created is not. Nobody currently serving in Washington has ever had to cast a vote on whether this account should still exist, and that is precisely the design. At the time, the justification sounded almost boring. Agencies were slow to pay legitimate judgments because they had to wait for the next budget cycle, and that embarrassed the government in front of the very courts that had ruled against it. So Congress solved an administrative headache by removing itself from the process entirely. Nobody in that room was thinking about 2026. They were thinking about a paperwork delay. 70 years later, that small fix has become one of the largest unsupervised payment pipelines in the federal government, and it got there without anyone ever deciding it should. So who actually controls it now? Not Congress. The Department of Justice negotiates the settlements. The losing agency requests the payout. Treasury releases the funds. The Government Accountability Office checks the paperwork, not whether the settlement was justified, just whether the numbers add up. That's the entire chain. 3 executive branch actors, 0 legislative checkpoints, and a courtroom that already closed the case before the public ever hears the dollar figure. Now here's where it stops being abstract. Say a federal agent violates someone's rights, an unlawful search, a wrongful arrest, a discrimination case inside a federal agency. The government settles. The payment comes from the Judgment Fund, not from that agency's budget, which means the agency responsible never feels it. No line item shrinks. No department head has to explain a shortfall. The employee involved often faces no consequence traceable to the payout at all, because financially nothing happened to them or their agency. The victim gets a check. The system that produced the harm stays exactly the same size, funded exactly the same amount next fiscal year, as if the incident never occurred. Multiply that across decades: Pigford, wrongful termination suits, constitutional violations, whistleblower retaliation cases, and you're looking at billions in federal misconduct that never once showed up as a cost to the people who caused it. The public sees a settlement number in a headline, if they see anything at all. They almost never see which office, which supervisor, which policy produced it, because the fund was never built to track that. It was built to close the case and move on. Remember, no one voted for this. Not the original design, and not $1 that has ever moved through it since. And here's the part that should actually worry you: it's completely legal. Every payment, every settlement, every dollar. There is no loophole being exploited, no rogue official breaking a rule. The rule was built this way on purpose, and that is what makes it permanent. To repeal it, Congress would have to pass a new law forcing every future judgment against the government back into the ordinary budget process, which means voting, every year, to pay people the courts already said the government owes them. No lawmaker wants to be the name attached to voted against paying a judgment, so the fund stays. It has survived 70 years of 100 different Congresses because dismantling it is politically radioactive and structurally inconvenient. And inconvenience in Washington is its own form of permanence. Once you see the judgment fund, you start noticing the pattern everywhere. It is one of dozens of permanent, indefinite appropriations scattered through Title 31, accounts that fund themselves forever, on the authority of a single vote cast by people no longer in office. Each one quietly removes a piece of government spending from the process you were taught is how democracy controls money. The check and balance you learned in school. Congress holds the purse strings, assumes someone is still holding them. In accounts like this one, nobody is. The money simply moves, on schedule, unwitnessed. So the question isn't really how many billions have passed through this one account since 1956. It's how many other permanent appropriations like it are sitting in the federal code right now, funding themselves, answering to no one, that you have simply never had a reason to look for. Saved to home/jarvisadmin/treasury account script, txt.